Welcome to the Live Well, presented by Rapala. Round in the final turn, headed for home. This is it, the end of the 2024 Bassmaster Elite Series season. The two events known as the Northern Swing. That is Ronnie Moore. I'm Tommy Sanders, also known as the New York Swing. We love New York because New York has 6 of the top 100 places to fish in the country, according to Bassmaster Magazine, and we're going to Champlain, which is definitely in that list.
Oh man, Champlain, we compared Lake Murray in the south. We said that is Lake Champlain for the south. So many fish, the size is so good. That is the reputation Lake Champlain has. Maybe lakes, in New York like Kyoya can put out a 12-pound largemouth like we saw a few weeks ago, the record. But for tournament lakes, Lake Champlain, one of the best tournament lakes in the country because of how many fish. The size average of the fish is getting up to that 4+ pound average for a lot of these guys. And then also the ability to catch smallmouth and largemouth timing. We've seen that in the past couple Elite Series events be a factor of, do you go largemouth fishing? Do you go smallmouth fishing? This used to be a body of water, Tommy, where we say you have to have a largemouth in your bag. And Palaniuk wins on all smallmouth in 2020. Then we get largemouth back in when Schmitt wins, and then in 2023, Kyoya wins on all smallmouth. So we don't know what to expect, but I think we'll kind of look like Bryan Schmitt's year compared to the other 2 years this time around.
You have some inside information on that then, right? So all water levels seem to be the determination of that.
So last year we had higher water levels, and we thought, man, the largemouth that's gonna be the deal. It almost spread them out too much, it seems. Like they weren't concentrated enough. It wasn't going on to a great enough extent. Maybe they were farther along in their summer phase, and so they were broken up a little bit more, and the smallmouth were positioned correctly to really take advantage of them. But this time around, we just had a Bass Nation event there. Great weights, largemouth mixed in with smallmouth. The guy who wins ended up focusing on largemouth. The day 2 leader was all smallmouth, and he was fishing offshore like we'd expect. And the day 1 leader, Frankie Appaluccio, if you know his name, he fished for the University of Alabama a few years ago, and we covered him in the college championship. He is from Jersey, and he had 24.5 pounds of largemouth on day 1, Tommy. So I called him and he said, it could be an X factor. That water's high, actually high enough to bring places that are never in play, never have enough water.
So higher
Tommy.
than 21?
Yes,
okay.
that are now going to be possibly in play for these Elite Series pros. I think some of those bays could come back into play. Some of those places we saw the marinas factor, that could be a deal as well. Obviously, there's going to be smallmouth, but what the Nation anglers dealt with, Tommy, 20-mile-an-hour winds every day. Very hard to get out in the abyss and use your electronics and see them. I know the Elite Series guys are the best in the world. They have the greatest chance to pull that off, but that could, with the largemouth being good, a lot of fish still being shallow, that deep bite, if it's windy and hard to do, people may plan B it and be happy with the success.
Our elites last year had to deal with whether, in fact, they had a postponement during the course of that tournament there. Now, is it going to be largemouth enough that, for the last several years, it's been mostly about the inland sea. None of this going down to Ticonderoga or any of that kind of stuff.
So, Missisquoi is always a place, if you don't want to run to Ty, that you can go to.
Okay.
Limited space because half of it's Canada, and we do not venture into Canada water on Lake Champlain. You have to stay right in that southern part of Missisquoi. You do have those bays like, Mallett's Bay, that's near the inland sea right below it. You have St. Albans, you have those different bays like that Carey Bay. All these different bays around the inland sea could be great largemouth areas. We've seen guys like Fighter, guys like Schmitt have done that in the past. But Ticonderoga has been putting them out, Tommy. I think there was a Wednesday night tournament before the Elite Series event, about a week before the Elite started. The Wednesday night 3-fish tournament, almost 15 pounds. So Ticonderoga does have the 4 to 5 pound largemouth you need, but they're going to have to keep an eye on the weather because you hardly can ever do that more than 2 days. You're going to have
big ask.
You're going to have a day where maybe you catch 14 pounds or a day where you just can't make it because it's going to be so rough. You're going to spend 3 hours of your day just trying to get there and back somehow.
So if people love what they saw Fujita doing last year, out there a little bit deeper, 12 to 30 feet of water, they'll get to see some of that, of course.
Yeah, that should still be a deal, but it might not be as hot and heavy. A lot of the anglers were saying that, well, one, because of the weather, it was harder to find them, but there was a great concentration of fish in that Nation event just a week or so before the Elite event goes on that were in that 10 feet or less. Whether you're winding a bladed jig or whether you're flipping grass or maybe topwater, whether it's a frog or maybe a fluke style bait, what are those types of deals are real things at Champlain that we can see happen. Obviously, the traditional things you expect will happen, and I had to make that phone call, Tommy, because I was going to go into this event thinking same old, it's going to be the inland sea and it's going to be smallmouth. Not necessarily the case this year, and so Champlain, even more of a mix-up for anglers.
Absolutely. Vast place, 500 square miles, 100 miles long. You've got plenty of room to work in there. If you're dialed into those largemouth, what are you going to see besides these techniques we already mentioned here?
Well, I think we've seen guys like Jamie Hartman, be able to catch some fish on a Carolina rig as well. That could be a deal. Those fish that are on bait fish in the inland sea are going to ride higher in the water column, no doubt about it. But those fish that maybe are on the New York side, maybe shallower points, maybe those flats, things like the humps, they could be probed with Ned rigs and obviously Carolina rigs, things like that. Maybe we see a little bit of return of a crankbait. Remember a few years ago, David Mullins should have won this event in 2020, I believe, with a crankbait. You also saw Kobe Krieger throwing a topwater in some of those bays as well for smallmouth. I think you could see a couple more baits in play than just a jig head minnow, and I'm not just saying that so they tune in and watch. I'm super excited about it because we just saw a big field of locals in the Nation event do it all kinds of ways.
Absolutely. Of course, in addition to all of this, and we're not going to get into this here, we have some great races going on. Progressive Bassmaster Angler of the Year, Dakota Lithium Rookie of the Year. You can find out all about those races, some interesting articles about that right here on Bassmaster.com. But that's it, the Tackle Warehouse, Bassmaster Elite, Plattsburgh, New York, Lake Champlain.